Well, let's talk now to Dr. Margaret Heffernan, who was advisor to the Casey Review into Culture and Standards of Behaviour of the Metropolitan Police. She's also a professor in practice at the University of Bath. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Claire.
We heard the Met Commissioner, Mark Rowley, there saying, well, we've let women down, apologising to the victims. He knows there's a big challenge ahead. Is it possible for him to gain the trust of women and men, for that matter, back in the Metropolitan Police?
I think it's possible. I think it's really important to understand it's going to take time. We're not terribly patient about these sorts of things with good reason, because it's so horrible. You definitely want it to be over tomorrow. But it won't be over tomorrow, and I really commend Mark Rowley for being so honest about the fact that it's going to take time, that bad stories will continue to come out. Because honestly, if he said it was going to be, over by Friday or over by the end of the year, nobody would take him seriously, and a lot of bad people would take heart from that. So I think we have to be pretty adult about this and recognize that the real corruption of the Met is so deep and it's so intricate that it is going to be a fearsome task to eliminate it.
Yes, and that's interesting because he's talking about rooting out individuals, and he says there's going to be regular court appearances, and this will go on. We heard from Farah Nazir, the chief executive of Women's Aid, earlier in the programme. She said things weren't missed, they were deliberately ignored. There is a culture at work here that is what needs changing. So it's not just about getting rid of the bad apples, is it? Because there was clearly collusion going on here that was pretty widespread and went on for quite some time. So it's not just about, have you got a conviction? Is there something you haven't been telling us? What about the people who looked the other way when they knew what he was up to?
Well, I think that's the heart of the matter. And, the reason that Dame Louise Casey invited me to advise her was because of the work that I've done on a syndrome I call willful blindness, which is what you see when major institutions really fail, whether it's the Catholic Church, whether it's big banks, whether it's hospitals, that what you see is not just that you see several patterns. One is that bad behavior starts with small things that people get away with. So they get a message that it's okay, you can get away with this kind of stuff. The other thing that happens is people start to realize individuals or processes going wrong, and they might kind of worry about it or think it's not quite right, but they don't say anything about it. Then it gets a little bit worse and more visible, and people might gossip about it at the pub or, in the corridor. And they sort of feel that gossiping about it is action, but it isn't. And all of those things allow these horrible behaviors to continue. And so you need, for something to be as bad as it is in the Met, you need really years of what we call organizational silence and collusion. And so it isn't just about weeding out the bad guys. It's about making every single person who works in the Metropolitan Police understand that they are their own security and they are the maintainers of the reputation and the trust of the Met. And every time they're silent about something they're uncomfortable about, they let the institution down. So it's got to be personal.
Yeah.
They have to understand that they personally have lost the trust of the people of London.
And he was talking about the good officers as well, of which there are many. But has everybody been contaminated now? Because we're talking about clearly, the horrific Sarah Everard murder, and now this, and there's been, a catalogue of other quite despicable events that have gone on. I'm reminded of what happened in Northern Ireland after the Good Friday Agreement, and you had the Royal Ulster Constabulary, primarily made up of Protestant police officers. They had to root and branch go in there and go, we are building a different, a progressive, a new forward-looking police force, and they now have the Police Service of Northern Ireland with the ambition is that you have a police officer serving from both sides of the political divide there. Yeah. Does something that radical need to happen with the Met now?
I think it does. I don't think the women of London will believe anything else, honestly. I mean, I have a daughter in her 20s who lives in London. She doesn't trust the police. She wouldn't go to them for help, and neither would she help the police. And this is really damaging, because if the public won't help the police, they can't do their job. So I think it does have to be pretty much reinvented and reconstructed. You know, one of the big problems with large institutions, and the Met is very, very large, is that people think if they speak up, they will be punished, or they think that it's disloyal. And so you need to build a culture in which people feel that when they see something wrong, it is the ultimate loyalty to speak up and say, hang on a second, that's not good enough. Or hang on a second, that's not the way we behave. And unless every single person in the force feels that and acts on it, then it isn't different.
We're getting Dame Louise Casey's independent review into culture and standards and behaviour. Mm-hmm. It began in February last year. It's due to finish this very month. We don't know how radical she's going to be with that. She'll certainly be forensic. But what do you think? I mean, it can't just be another report, can it? That sits, that people kind of make all the right noises when it comes out, and there's a very, very slow sifting through it. What do you think needs to happen?
Well, I completely agree with you. I mean, please, God, don't let it be like Hillsborough, where everybody accepts the report and then buries it for 5 years. That would be a catastrophe. I think, what I hope is it's taken seriously and it's visibly acted upon quickly and consistently and coherently, and nobody stops until the job is done. I think, the danger is that politicians frequently want quick fixes and nice figures that show, right, we're heading in the right direction, and then they completely take their eye off the ball. And that cannot be allowed to happen. We have had too many moments like this in the history of the Metropolitan Police where we've been told it's all sorted, and all that's happened is it's got worse and more frightening. And it's important to remember that corrupt police forces increase the crime rate in the cities where they serve. So this is really fundamental. It is kind of a make or break moment for the Met.
Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your expertise and insight. We really appreciate it. That is Dr. Margaret Heffernan there, advisor to the Casey Review into Culture and Standards of Behaviour in the Met, also a professor in practice at the University of Bath. And